And we are live on YouTube as well. So I can see a couple of people have already joined in. I think like more will be joining as we go. So I think we can get started. Um, Everything looks good. All right. Hey everyone, I'm Aniket. I take care of community and initiatives at DevFolio. And yep, it's a based morning today. We're starting with week 3 for the Onchain Summer Buildathon. And I think like this is the last 2 weeks remaining for the project submission deadline, that being on 30th June. So it's the final 2 weeks, and we are hoping that all the builders are, on their feet, ready to build and ship left and right. And yeah, like for the past 2 weeks, it has mostly been about the intro. We have had all our partner workshops, today being the last one of them. And then these 2 weeks are just going to be building, feedback, mentorship hours, and all other fun stuff lined up for all the builders. So yeah, for today we have Noah and Sunny from Synthetix, who are going to be talking about the trading track. So I'm going to hand over the virtual mic to them. Meanwhile, feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A box. They would be happy to take it on the fly. And yeah, over to you, Sunny.
Cool. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Yeah, nice to meet everyone virtually. I'll screen share. We have a small slideshow that we can show you guys, and then yeah, like we'll get into some technical details later, but I'll let Noah initially kind of talk through like an overview of Synthetix and why you'd want to like integrate with us. Okay, 1 second.
Good.
Go. Okay, cool. Sweet. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Take it away, Mr. Noah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So to kick it off, I'll just give a super high level of Synthetix, and then Sunny can dive into more like perp specific stuff. So yeah, basically, Synthetix, the core system has two main pieces of functionality. One piece is that it generates a decentralized stablecoin. This is a similar implementation to like Liquidity and early versions of MakerDAO, where you can deposit decentralized collateral and then basically take out a loan of stablecoins against that collateral. And so that's one main piece of functionality. The second main piece of functionality is the ability to provide liquidity to derivatives markets. So this is sort of similar to liquidity provisioning on Uniswap or other AMMs, where the deposited collateral can either back this loan of stable coins or can also back these derivatives markets. And if the derivatives markets are generating fees, effectively collecting more stable coins from traders than it's paying out, then those are realized gains for the liquidity providers, and that effectively pays down the loans that are generating stable coins. So one important thing to note is the base implementation currently is just using USDC. It's not issuing a decentralized stablecoin with decentralized collateral currently, but other types of collateral could be added by governance in the future. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, so I sort of gave that overview here on this slide. Yeah, again, just reiterating that we're like right now on base, there's around 25 million USDC of TVL collateral provided to the V3 system. And right now, the main markets built on top of the core system are perpetual futures markets, which again, Sun, you'll get into in more details soon. Something that you can build on. Not only can you build things on top of the perpetual futures markets, but you can also build markets that would plug directly into Synthetix and leverage that liquidity as well. So on the slide we were just on a second ago, there are a couple ideas for different types of markets that you can start building. like a prediction market, like spot or options markets. They're sports, like sports betting type of things, like randomness oracles. So that's a whole category that you can explore. And that's sort of parallel to building things on top of the perpetual futures markets that are driving the main volume on base right now. Right.
Yeah, I think we have.
Sunny, maybe Sunny, do you want to speak to more of the purpose specific implementation here?
Yeah, so we only have one actually we have a few markets. One of them is a spot market, which kind of the perps market uses, but basically on base we have our perps implementation live, which is connected up to our core system that is backed by the $25 million in LP collateral that Noah recently mentioned. And yeah, like it's very similar to our optimism product. I don't know how familiar everyone is with perps in general, but it's basically a futures market that's perpetual. And yeah, like basically you open and close trades, you have a long and short skew. We have, I think what makes our product unique is the funding rate mechanism. We have basically it incentivizes like traders to close the gap in the skew that a market creates by paying out funding depending on which side of the market you're on, and so allowing the skew to be balanced ensures that the LPs aren't taking on the risk, the counterparty risk, and so you basically have LPs that ideally are only pocketing the fees, and not any of the downside risk of potentially being a counterparty in if the skew is skewed one way or the other. So yeah, and then yeah, so we have $25 million in backing. We have about $50 million in perps OI across a bunch of assets here. And yeah, so I guess we can talk a little bit about kind of how to build on not just the perps contracts. We'll talk about kind of how you can build any market. So this diagram kind of talks through a little bit about it's very high level. There's a lot more like implementation stuff that's happening under the hood, but essentially similar to what Noah mentioned here, you have some LPs that provide currently on base, it's only USDC, but we imagine later on we may have ETH, like some other types of collaterals that they'll be coming down the pipeline. But this is all obviously governance. Governance makes all those decisions. But yeah, and so once the collateral is in the system, you essentially you can delegate it to any type of pool that you'd like. And then the pool is what registers the market that it wants to provide liquidity to. And so like this SC pool is the Spartan Council pool, which is the main pool that the Spartan Council governs, and so it's basically in charge of like figuring out how much of the liquidity that it has available to it goes to which market and like its weights and everything. And so the SC pool currently backs both the perps and spot markets on base. And so all of the perps markets, the 30 plus assets that I mentioned earlier, are all backed by the Spartan Council pool. This DGen pool is kind of just an example. Like we could theoretically create another pool that has a different perps market with maybe like some low cap, assets that we want to create a perp futures product for, and so you could just hook that up, and then as an LP you can kind of decide if you want to provide like I don't know some percentage of your LP collateral towards the DGen pool, which then is essentially backing whatever markets it is. In this case, in this diagram, it would be like whatever DGen market, and then maybe there's like a lottery market that you can also register and get collateral delegated to you, essentially. But yeah, so this is kind of like a high level overview. Okay, so that's I think maybe we can jump into some technical stuff. So I think first thing I want to show you guys is like to get started building one of these markets. The way you do that, I mean, I'm on the Synthetix V3 code base, which is this here. I can drop it into chat. Second.
I got it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, so really, these are the three items that you need to implement if you want to be a market on the Synthetix core system. You need to provide a name, the reported debt, and the minimum credit. So the reported debt is essentially a lot of times, like if you think about sports betting or like insurance markets or even like our perps product, there's losses that are incurring that haven't been finalized yet, and those you still want to make sure that you're reporting that debt up to the system, and so that way. The LPs aren't are like know about the incoming debt that might be that might they might incur, and so that's this is a way to return like what that value will be, and you can return zero here if there's obviously no debt to be reported, and then minimum credit kind of plays on this a little bit where it's essentially like this is my line of credit that I need to have at all times so that my market is not like it's not underwater essentially. So yeah, so these three are essential for ensuring that the core system does everything it needs to and works the way it needs to for the market to perform well. So yeah. So if you go into the perps market, so you can see like if you go into the markets folder, we have a bunch of markets that we're working through right now. So you can use these as examples as you get started on your own market. But yeah, so if you go into like perps market, I have here in the iPerson Market Factory. This is we've used a factory pattern here because you can just like obviously if you have multiple assets, the factory essentially is in charge of like creating like all the different assets and markets around those. And then like one entire factory is like one market in the previous diagram I kind of showed you here. Um, so if you go into the interface here, you can see it inherits from this iMarket, which essentially uh, forces it to implement these functions. So in the case of the Perps Market Factory, the reported debt is essentially like all of the unrealized losses or gains that traders have. It's actually gains. But yeah, like all of the gains that they haven't, like if they were, if all the traders were to close their positions right now, it would basically the LPs would be kind of on the hook for any gains that they may have incurred, essentially. And so this just makes sure that the debt is reported up through the core system, so the LPs are aware of it. And then minimum credit here is like for the perps market, it's essentially the like open interest. How much it's based on the open interest of all of the assets, and then you can there is a factor that you can like lower it by in case like we feel like if you have basically if you have minimum credit that's like the entire OI, you are probably being very conservative, and so there is a factor that's configurable by the Spartan Council to like kind of determine what the minimum credit there is. But yeah, so that's so you can take a look at these functions and play around with it. But yeah, that's kind of the like how you would get started on building a new market. Let me get into how you would actually integrate with the perps market. I think that'll be helpful if you wanted to build something on top of this system. Um, so the first thing you'd want to do is create an account, which is like within this perps account module. So once you create an account, what you can do is like come in here and modify your collateral. So you can add whatever. Currently on the base system, we only support SNX USD, and so or sorry, USDC. And so you would just specify the account ID of the created account and like the amount you want to add to the account. And that will deposit the margin. So that this is essentially like adding margin to your account. Um, and then once you add margin to the account, that's when you have some available trading margin. And once you have that, you can commit an order. We use kind of like a commit settle pattern to ensure that there's no weird front running or anything that happens. So we basically what you do is commit an order, and we can go take a look at what this request looks like.
And just to clarify, like if you were to build a trading bot, for instance, interacting with the commit order function would be a major piece of the integration.
Yep. Yeah, so the request is essentially market ID, account ID, your size. We'll talk about settlement strategy in a bit. The acceptable price, this is more for like slippage, in case the price moves against you faster than you can settle the order. A tracking code, this is more for us, and also like for integrators if they wanted to track how much volume they're providing. And then you can also provide a refer, which is there's refer fees, like we pay out integrator fees to like Quenta and Polynomial, and so this is a way to track kind of where those fees are sent. So yeah, so that's basically how you commit an order. So like if all of the checks pass, your order is now committed. And most likely what will happen on base or on testnet is we have a few bots that are running. And because of the decentralized nature, basically some settlement bot will come in and like settle your order uh, after a certain amount of time has passed. I think the settlement delay is about like 2 seconds. And so pretty much the next block, you're able to settle your trade. And the keepers, the bots, do get compensated for settling your trade. And so all of that comes from the trader's margin itself. So if we go into the settlement, um, in the settle order function, you can take a look at kind of amount to do that. So basically, we track P&L, but also if you scroll down, yeah, we determine what the settlement reward for settling is, and then we pay the keeper essentially from the market. So yeah. Cool. So that's how you'd get an order into the system. And then once the order is there, there's a bunch of functions on the account that you can start like getting like, you can figure out what the total collateral value is. The account's open interest. This one's a key one, the get open position. This will give you like the current P&L of the account, the funding, which we talked about earlier, like how much funding they've accrued. It can be positive or negative depending on what side of the skew that they're on. The position size, and then like there's an interest component that's also that is applied to your P&L. And so the total P&L kind of includes all of these other values essentially. So this one's a good one to like if you wanted to display anything on your end on the front end. Get open position size. So yeah, so you can take a look at this, but like essentially, like, yeah, like this one's also pretty important. This is like all of your available trading margin, and it takes into account like all the P&Ls that on your existing positions and stuff. And this is also pretty key, like to determine how much you can actually withdraw at any given point. This will not allow you to withdraw up to essentially, whatever your total collateral value is, subtracting out like any potential profits or losses that you're incurring. And also like any fees you might have to pay out in case like your trade gets liquidated or like I guess of whatever fees that you have to pay the keeper for settling future trades. Um, but yeah, so the way I think this is probably pretty good to go through actually, is how it figures out these margins. So if we go into account, uh, yeah, so get available margin is essentially like your total collateral value. So like whatever when we modified collateral and added margin, whatever that value is, and then it calculates the account P&L, it just adds both of those together. So that's your available margin. The required margins is an interesting one. So basically the way we determine if you are so the consequence of your margin, your trading margin being under the required margin for all your open positions is that you're essentially eligible for liquidation. And the second that happens, we also have liquidation keepers that will come in and just liquidate your position. So it's not like it's not a manual process where someone has to like keep checking this at all times. It's decentralized in that like these keepers are incentivized to liquidate you, so they're hunting to liquidate you as quickly as possible if you're eligible. And so generally this will happen pretty much instantaneously, if our keeper system is healthy, which it appears to be so far. And that generally just means that they're being compensated in the right way. But the way your required margin is determined are a couple of parameters that are on the market configuration. So basically, there's an initial margin ratio, a maintenance margin ratio, and I think there's a scalar value as well. Um, what is that? I'll find it, but yeah. Anyway, so let me talk through these. Okay. Oh yeah, no, that's not bad. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so initial margin ratio is essentially when you're opening a position, there like we want a pretty generous amount. Like this is a value that the Spartan Council decides on, like how much, like the larger this ratio is, the higher the margin requirements for initially when you're opening a trade, and this is per market. So ETH, you may not have to have like a huge initial margin ratio, but maybe Pepe or something. I guess Pepe is pretty large cap these days. I don't know, some other shit coin. You probably want a much higher margin ratio, which essentially forces during when you're settling a trade, it forces the trader to have a larger margin just in case there's more variability in like price fluctuations and stuff. And this protects the system from forcing liquidations if like your margin requirements are met. And then your maintenance margin is really what is being tracked by these liquidation bots to check if you're eligible for liquidation. It's some fraction of the initial margin. Initial margin is used mostly for when you're opening trades, essentially. So making sure that you have a specific amount of margin when you're opening. And then once it's opened, then it falls back onto the maintenance margin to make sure you're maintaining a certain amount of margin throughout like the life cycle of your trade. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of, and then you can kind of look at the calculation here, calculate required margins. It's also dependent on, like the ratio is dependent on the skew itself. So the impact on skew is essentially like if you have like 10 ETH of longs in the system, and then you have 8 ETH of short, you have a 2 ETH of long skew, and so that's the impact that this is talking about essentially. Um, but yeah, okay, so let's talk about liquidations, and I think that covers like the kind of the larger pieces. And then I'll obviously take some questions. I'm throwing a lot at you, I know, but hopefully some of it's making sense. Yeah, so liquidation's pretty straightforward. Again, it's you're only eligible for liquidation if like we can actually take a look at that really quick. Um, we check your available margin, we get your account required margins, and you're eligible if the required margin plus any liquidation reward is greater than your available margin. So you can take a look at kind of I think we went through some of how this is calculated. So yeah, so once it's liquidatable, then we flag the account, and we kind of just once it's flagged, you cannot do anything with the account. You can't change your position sizes or anything like that. At this point, once it's flagged, like you basically there's a keeper. The keeper can also just flag the account, and you get a reward for that. And then the actual liquidation, like liquidate flagged, you can also like a keeper can call this function where they can liquidate a bunch of accounts at once instead of having to call this liquidate function every time. Um, but it will attempt to liquidate as much of the account as possible, and then determines what the liquidation reward is, and then actually just liquidates. So liquidation is pretty. Let's see. Yeah, it goes through each of your accounts, whatever's open, and then it starts like winding them down essentially, and then it seizes all your collateral and deposits into the core system and like empties out your account essentially. Um, the one thing to note here is that if it's a very large position, which like if you liquidated it the entire thing at once, what could happen is now you've created this huge skew. And so the liquidation bot could potentially have like an advantage at that point where they could liquidate a really huge account, and then they could open their own position, get a really nice price because they're now like they're kind of taking advantage of the fact that like the skew is so large. And so what we did was in the liquidate, like we basically we have a set of configurable parameters where uh let's say within like 1 minute window, only X amount of collateral or like X amount of any position or asset can be liquidated. And so it's basically like rate limiting the liquidations. So that way we're not like there's no real advantage based on like all the fees you have to pay and everything, where you can take advantage of this type of like skew arbitrage. And so we can take a look at that really quick. So those are these values here, max seconds and liquidation windows. These, like anytime I'm showing configuration parameters, these are all things that the Spartan Council is kind of in charge of. And you can also go into like our SIPs, and like you can take a look at like what some of the market configurations are if you wanted to do your own calculations. Um, but yeah, so uh, there's I wouldn't like this is more implementation details. It gets pretty gnarly how like some of this implementation is, but I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here. But just know that there is this element of like rate limited liquidations to ensure that like this queue isn't taken advantage of essentially. Um, but a lot of the code is in this perps market configuration details. But yeah, so that's liquidations. I don't know. Maybe we should talk about pricing. We do use Oracle feeds. We have our own mechanism. I don't know if you want to talk about the Oracle Manager, Noah. That could be something.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
do a quick overview of like the Oracle integration. We have a couple of specific questions about perps in the chat, and someone wanted us to talk about like sports AMM stuff. So maybe I'll do a brief overview on Oracle stuff. You can wrap up talking about perps, and we can like workshop what a sports implementation would look like. That sound
Yeah,
good?
sounds good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so oracles. Okay, so the question is, yeah, what is the price of an asset when you either right now or as best as we can tell right now within a certain staleness tolerance or at a certain time in the past. Those are sort of the two categories of price oracle problems to solve. So the V3 system has it's almost like a standalone protocol called the Oracle Manager. This is a stateless system where you can have these nodes that you call for data, and then they can plug into other nodes, and those plug into other nodes, and then they just have one deterministic ID to figure out to specify what you want to pull the price from. So a simple thing might be what does Chainlink think the price of ETH is most recently? But maybe you want it to be give me the average of what Chainlink thinks the price of ETH is most recently and what Pyth thinks the price of ETH is most recently. So you could have like a Pyth node, a Chainlink node, and then they connect to a node to average them, and then you use that one for the price. So in general, the issue with the on-chain prices or using the what's useful. The main use case for the Oracle Manager is really more about assessing collateral value, where we're not necessarily filling orders based on the price that's provided by the Oracle Manager. It might be referenced as like a safety mechanism or like a stopgap, but it's more just to give us a general sense of how much collateral is available. And if the price has moved in the past 2 or 3 milliseconds, it's not a problem, right? So like in the case of liquidations, for instance, we need to know if the price seems to have dropped below a certain threshold for a position, that the value of that collateral has dropped below a certain point. But if it sort of wicked down below that liquidation price, came back up, and the oracles didn't pick up on that, it's sort of like a no harm, no foul situation. We can move forward. So that's the like yeah. So like when you're issuing loans and processing liquidations, on-chain Oracle prices are good to use, and they're also simple because you can just sort of take whatever's available on chain. Maybe error if the current price is too stale. But that's generally all of that logic is encompassed in this Oracle Manager system. So without shipping new smart contract code, we can just sort of configure these nodes together to represent the price feed that we want to use based on what's available on chain. For order settlement, it's a little more complicated because we want to make sure that it's not front runnable, right? Like even if prices are getting pushed every single block, which they aren't, but you can imagine they were, still that could be front runnable if the block time is even a second, a split second. You know, in traditional finance, people front run like microseconds. So instead, the way that the pattern there works is that you make this price commitment, you make your order commitment, you provide the collateral. And then a bot comes in with a signed price effectively from the past. It takes a price for the timestamp where you made the commitment, and then the order is settled based on that. So it's a two-step process. So again, like a way to think about it there is I show up with my tokens to the trade shop or however you have it. Say basically I sign a transaction. I say, hey, I'd like to exchange this for this other asset at whatever price is like right now, pointing at the clock, right? And then later a keeper bot can come in and say, hey, I have a signed price for the time that this person agreed to make the trade. And then the order gets executed at that price. So that's effectively how the front running concern is taken care of. So throughout the code base, you might see this ERC 7412 standard, and this was developed in the course of working on Synthetix v3. And this is a pattern where there's an error, a specific type of error will get emitted if price data is unavailable. And then using the client library, it can basically simulate the transaction. It can see that this error is there. If it tried to submit it, it would say, hey, we don't have the price from the past that we need, or we need a fresher price, whichever. And then the client library can say, okay, never mind, really the transaction that I want to send is going to be a multi-call where first we update the price on chain and then we execute the trade. And then it'll see that that's working, and then it'll be able to put that through. So that there was a lot in there, but obviously the way that Synthetix integrates with oracles and off-chain price feeds is an important part of the engineering here, so worth highlighting.
Yeah, it's definitely a core piece of perps in general. But again, like if you're building like a sports AMM, obviously, you need a different Oracle mechanism that is more novel to that industry. I don't know. I think, yeah. I don't know if we want to get into that maybe next. Was there something else, Noah, that you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, someone in the chat asked what defines a liquidation, like what determines if a position is liquidatable, and when you're creating positions, are there defaults, or like if I just want to like open a position, how would I think about the parameters to send?
Yeah, so the first question around liquidations, I think I answered that one, which is basically it's all determined based on your required margin. So again, think about how big your position size is, how much the impact on the skew that you're creating is, and then you multiply that by, your initial or your maintenance margin ratio, which is really just like a factor of your initial margin. And so that will provide you, like, again, like you can always call on the perps account module, like the get required margins function and it'll tell you like how much margin you need to have in your account before you're like you're in a liquidatable state. So these are calculated for you, and if you want to get into like how they're calculated, they're also available in this perps account. Is eligible for liquidation. Um, and then yeah, so the parameters to send in, I think I talked about that as well for like opening an order. I mean, there are some defaults like the settlement strategy that I mentioned, the strategy ID. This basically determines like a lot of actually, we should take a look at that. Um, Yeah, so this determines like, again, I talked about the settlement delay where this is the delay between the commit and settle, like how long the window is where you can settle the actual trade. The verification contract, this is how you get the price, the feed ID for the price, the reward, if it's disabled or not, commitment price delay. Yeah, so this is like how long of I guess I don't even remember this one actually. But the good news is that like there are settlement strategies already. These are configured by the council, the Spartan Council, so you can just grab one of these and use them. I think we only have ever had one of these. But the reason that you could have potentially multiple ones of these is if you wanted to settle using like a chain link strategy versus like a pith one. That's kind of the reason for creating this optionality essentially. But yeah, so you could just pull, most likely this will just be 0, which is like the first index. There's only one so far that we've been using, which is pith. And then yeah, like really it's these values, and you can just say like you don't have to provide this, and then just the 0 address for the referrer is fine. And then yeah, and then that's pretty much it. Like you just need the multi ID, account ID, and the size delta. But yeah, is that hopefully that answers.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe we just open up a blank screen and like workshop like sort of a high level scope of how you tackle a sports market.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me talk about one thing. I think this might clear up some confusion around how we're interacting with the core system. So uh, a lot of these, like in the perps market factory, we have anytime you're depositing, like USD into the system, you'd basically call this like deposit market USD. And like if you want to, like the line of credit I'm talking about, where like the LP's collateral is delegated through the pool to the market, that will be available in like the withdrawable market USD, and that function is here. So oh no, Command W closes the tab instead of the window, of course. Uh, One thing to um, take a look at, this market manager module. This is how a market would actually, this is on the core system of Synthetix. It's an under protocol Synthetix contract. Oh, was that a question? Thought I heard someone.
You triggered my Google Home, sorry.
Oh,
Continue.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see here, like this is how, like this register market call with the address of the market. This is what gets called if, like, a pool wants to delegate to it. You have to first register with the core system so it knows that there is a market that it can delegate collateral to. And then, you can call get withdrawal market USD, specify your market ID, and it'll tell you how much you have available, market address, yeah, reported debt. So this, I would say this is a pretty important module to kind of look at to understand all the different thing. Like this is really like the connection to, like, for an external market into the core system. So that's why I wanted to just point it out. Yeah, this is key here. Like this is how you deposit any credit that the market has gained, that the LPs can realize, and like all of that credit is kind of it's sent through the whole chain to the LPs essentially. And then withdrawing is kind of the opposite of that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess we could workshop it. Let's see. Maybe I can. Definitely not prepared for this, so bear with me
I
while
figured
I.
we could just spitball. I mean, even in just like a blank text doc or something would be fun.
Yeah, one second. Let me get that ready. That language. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, so
Yeah,
maybe.
I was thinking not even in code, like we could just sort of scope out what it would entail.
Uh, okay. Do you want to do that? Do you
Yeah,
have other
yeah. I mean,
tips?
yeah, sure, I can. Uh, uh,
I've actually thought about this a little bit, so I can try to help for sure.
yeah, yeah. You're definitely more of a sports guy than me. Uh, okay, cool. You guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess like I don't know. I can ask some questions, and Sonny, you probably have a better sense of the specifics. Like my thinking
Yeah,
is like, so we need an oracle, but you only need the oracle. Do you need an ongoing oracle for like the um like other markets, or is it just its settlement? I've always thought of it like it'd be like just a binary option.
yeah, I
I guess
would say
it's like,
let's just
yeah,
assume it's like one game that we are creating a market for. Like there's a game coming up tonight, and there will be an
Spartans
oracle that will
versus
provide us like the settlement score or something at the end, right? Um,
sure.
so yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Nice. Okay. Um, yeah,
So
so and
you'd
then there's
want
just
similar
one
mechanisms,
score at the end, right?
right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say we probably want similar mechanisms in that like you'd want to create an account, get people's like some type of collateral. Um, although I suppose like you want to do that and then like you could create I think the thing to like manage in the market is that um you want to make sure you have the same amount of bets on Spartans and Athenians. That way the LPs are just basically like you're just getting they're just accruing all the fees in like all of the bets that are being made. And the way I think
Yeah.
sports books do this is like they just kind of mess with the line a little bit. So let's say if you bet $100 on like Spartans, you like win $95 back or whatever. And so that's like, and the $5 there is like LPs kind of realizing that.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
like
all of
a
this,
maker, like a maker fee. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so like the thing to remember here also is that like, okay, so if there's a lot of the market probably also wants to figure out how to like have equal amount of bets on both teams. So the way I would think you'd want to do that is you want to have if there's a lot of bets on Spartans, for example, maybe the betting on Athenians is more favorable in terms of like your winning. So like the line is like a little bit more I guess it's more like if you bet $100, maybe you win $120 because the line has now moved. So a lot more bets would come in on Athenians. This is assuming that obviously both are pretty fair, like even teams. Um, you also like if this is a real world game, you'd most likely want to just get the actual line of the sports betting from an oracle itself, like the initial like opening line. So that way you're not working from like scratch essentially.
Yeah. But I guess just for the sake of the workshop, I mean, so yeah, I guess editorializing here, like obviously this isn't like a quick thing that we're gonna actually bang out in 10 minutes. There's a lot of like creativity and engineering that goes into deciding how to build these things. So you could make a million different implementations. But I think yeah, it's sort of a good, so for a super like dumbed down version, I think like maybe the best way to think about it is like at like sort of settlement. So there's sort of a like sort of there's sort of a mode that the market's in while before the game has ended, and then there's a mode afterwards. So maybe looking at it backwards, it's like sort of there's sort of a payout that occurs, right? And so you've accrued collateral from all the positions, and the LPs are sort of paying out sort of
Yeah,
what's
this is where you'd
left
call
over,
like
basically.
you'd draw market USD essentially from like the core system and pay out whoever bet on the winning team.
Right. If necessary, and then sort of extra, and then sort of or there's like extra collateral. This is a situation where LPs are basically locked in for the cycle of the game, right? Because you have an issue of passive liquidity right before it ends. I think they call it like a gamma explosion, and options lingo, but or sort of like extra collateral has been accrued from the positions. It would be deposit market collateral, inclusive, and this would be inclusive of trading fees collected effectively, right?
Yeah, one
Uh,
thing to note here is the market itself can escrow that collateral when the like when someone bets on a team, or you could also just have the core system hold it, but just make sure to include that in the reported debt because technically that's not really the LPs yet, essentially. But yeah.
right. Cool. Yeah, so like the Oracle, when the game ends, the Oracle system, which could be, I mean, I don't know if they're sort of consumer oracles for sports stuff currently. But you would build up as much of a sort of, there's like sort of decentralized compute things. I think like chain link functions would let you just call it to an API, a Web2 API. So yeah, this settlement would occur and then this payout gets calculated. So prior to this, you're allowing people to create positions. You would have them deposit this collateral. I guess, Sonny, would you think you would keep this in the market, or you would deposit it straight into the uh straight into the
Um,
course?
I probably would deposit it directly into the core system, just because I would reduce the surface area of what I need to keep track of in the market. Um,
Right. Okay, cool.
but I think we should talk about. I don't think we have a lot of time. I want to talk about like the
Yeah,
reported debt and minimum. Oh, we'd want to maybe use that. So the
cool.
reported debt here, like again, going back to like the market interface that needs to be implemented, the reported debt here could be you could you could do something very sophisticated where like the reported debt is increasing the higher the likelihood during the game that like one of the teams is winning or something, or initially it can just be zero if you haven't reported, like if there's no debt that's incurred until like, obviously settlement time. Or you like if you're depositing all your collateral into the system, this reported debt would be all of that collateral essentially that is owed back to the traders. And so what would end up happening during settlement is that like once one of the teams wins, all of their trader margin that lost, essentially you can subtract out of the reported debt, and that ends up becoming credit for the LPs essentially, because your reported debt is low, but all of the margin you've already deposited into the core system. I hope that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I see. And then I mean, I guess there are a couple different directions you can go in, but then there's sort of the minimum credit to keep in mind here too, right?
Well,
Like,
the minimum credit is the more interesting here, I think, because what you'd want in the minimum credit is as you're taking on more and more bets on one team, if the skew is very large, you want to make sure there's at least enough to cover like any winnings that are happening
right.
for one side, essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
so right.
so minimum credit should be like, I need at least this much money to cover any potential wins of bettors that bet on the winning team. And so a lot of the winnings could be covered by traders betting on the losing team, but there's definitely like if there's any skew there, that's where you'd want to report this minimum credit. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So the quote for the order should take into account the skew.
And look, there's a lot of different ways you can deal with the skew. Like
Yeah.
we're using like perps terms, but yeah, there's like different betting lines that like the Oracle can provide, and like betting lines change all the time, like even before the game. So continuing to use that to like keep refreshing the logic here would be super important.
Yeah. So, and then just to like really summarize at a high level, you have like 100 dollars on Spartans. You have, let's say, $50 on the Athenians. Now it's the LPs are basically, and this is also a way to think about high level what's happening with perps. Like LPs are sort of like providing $50 on the Athenians, sort of temporarily in exchange for trading fees. And then the sort of engineering challenge here is essentially like, how do you incentivize more people to bet on the Athenians effectively through trading the fees or needing to look at other oracles and things like that. It's sort of like you want a mechanism where the LPs are able to sort of sell off the position on the Athenians that they've accrued, so that they're able to be sort of delta neutral on this market and then just collect the trading fees here. So provide
exactly.
but yeah, so just like essentially providing better odds on the Athenians would be one way to do that. And if it's better odds than other trading venues are offering, then you would assume an arbitrager would come in and pick that up basically. So yeah, I think we're running out of time. Hopefully maybe that's a way to put
I
a
think
bow
there were
on
some
it.
questions.
A lot of ways to tackle this, but are there? I'm not now because I'm screen sharing. I'm not watching it anymore.
Has anyone used Synthetix to build an insurance protocol? I think DB did, right, for a while.
There's a prototype floating around, but yeah, I mean, insurance has a similar dynamics to options, expiring futures, sports. The real challenge comes with like there's more information in the market over time. If there's a discrete settlement event, you need to make sure that as you near that settlement event, that the passive liquidity providers aren't taken advantage of, basically. Like that's the engineering challenge there. But it's absolutely possible.
How to get the market ID. So when you register the market with the core system, it assigns you a market ID and you can use that in your future calls to whatever. Out of all the events that synthetic smart contracts can emit, in your opinion, what are the most important events? I would argue all of them are, but it really just depends on like the context in which like what data you're really looking for. In general, I guess maybe this question's asked because like let's say there's like fluctuating amount of like withdrawable USD or something that's happening, like how they can keep track of that. A lot of this you would do on the smart contract level, like if you're integrated with the market. So I would always like there are functions on the market manager module that we went over to make sure like you have like the sufficient collateral to ensure your market is not insolvable or anything. Um, but in general, yeah, on from a front end integrator side, I would say like a lot of these events, it really just depends on kind of the context for the app. But we try to like be pretty liberal with events in general. So hopefully all the data is surfaced. And we also have some GraphQL stuff, right? That people can use. I'm not too familiar with that infrastructure. I don't know, Noah, if you know anything about that.
For the Oracle integration?
No, more data through like subgraphs and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I think in the mono repo we do have some subgraphs. I'm not sure how up to date they are, but yeah, that's another good source of data. I think a lot of people are relying on Dune lately. But yeah, it's all on chain.
Cool. Okay, I'm building a trading pool provider, which in theory would interact with perps markets based on the trade user wants to perform. Okay, one integrated process that is integrating with different perp exchanges. Is there a standard contract which all perps markets will build on Synthetix will expose? If yes, that would reduce my integration problem many folds. I want to get quotes from multiple exchanges and orders to them to start with. Let's see. I don't know if I understand. Okay, one integrating with different perp exchanges. Okay. Yeah, we have in use. I guess let's give them the link to the use canon perps market proxy. I think that will solve the problem here. So There is
Yeah.
a contract called Perps Market Proxy, which proxies your request to a router that routes you to the specific module, essentially. So you could use that one. It's called Perps Market Proxy. On the Canon website, you can interact with it. So I think Noah can provide the
Yeah, I
link.
just did. Yep.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Those are all the questions I had.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're over time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can give it another minute in case anyone has any last questions. Maybe we can pick up one or two in case they come in. We can give it a few seconds, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I see something in the chat about flexibility of the pricing oracle. So if yeah, so I mentioned before there's the Oracle Manager, which is just a system for determining like recent price, latest price to the best ability of the data available on chain. So it's actually trivial to just write an external node contract. You can look in the Synthetix v3 monorepo, and the external node contract could just be like an adapter with whatever other Oracle system exists. For the order settlement use cases, Sunny mentioned earlier, there's like a pluggable, like different settlement strategies in the perps markets. So it'd be possible to build a different settlement strategy for like that commit reveal pattern for Oracle settlement that could be specific to a different Oracle network or implementation.
I think we are good here. Right. I think we can call this a wrap. Thanks a lot, Sunny and Noah, for joining in and really talking through Synthetix, what it can help with, and especially like the sports AMM use case. I think that is something really interesting, and I see like a few people writing in chat that it is super helpful. And yeah, for the builders, this brings us to the end of the on-chain summer buildathon workshop series. And next up, we have a mid buildathon project feedback session. I think like we're going to be we're going to we're going to be taking a workshop on Wednesday, where we are going to be talking about what makes a good buildathon project, some of the key tips and tricks that you can put into your submission on Devfolio, so that the judges can understand your project the best. You make sure all important points are covered. So we'll just help you craft a really end-to-end submission on the platform, and we also will be having office hours with the base team on the same day. You should be receiving an email about it shortly with all the details. So we'll see you there. And once again, Noah and Sunny, thanks a lot for joining in. Any final closing thoughts on your end, Noah and Sunny?
Nothing else for me. This was fun. Yeah, and anyone working on this for the hackathon or buildathon can just reach out to us directly too. Always happy to chat.
Awesome.
Yep, always available to help. Thank you.
All right,
Cool.
thanks,
Thanks.
folks. All right, see you, everyone.
Bye.